Hi, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to explore just how rigged our tax system is, specifically when it comes to those of you that are single. I've created a case study here to show the difference between the taxation for a couple versus a single person, and I created it to illustrate some of the differences that there are, but I'll tell you what, I was very surprised by some of the output here. The impact is even larger than I thought it would be. Let's get into it. So the case that I created is relatively simple, and I did that on purpose because I wanted this to not be about complicated tax strategy or anything like that, but simply to isolate the differences between a couple and a single person. So here's the case study that I started with. I'll have it up on the screen here. So it's a single gentleman, 60 years old, living in Ontario, $400,000 in the RRSP, $100,000 in the TFSA, $90,000 income, planning to retire at 65, and they own their home free and clear, which is worth $500,000. Looking at that now, that's probably more of a Manitoba number for real estate than an Ontario number, but that's what I have in there. When we get into it in a second, you'll see in the second case, the only thing that I've added is a spouse. That spouse comes in, they have the exact same birthday. That spouse has zero assets, zero CPP, zero OAS. There is no financial advantage in terms of cash flow or assets coming in from that spouse. It's simply that they exist, and that's the only change that I'm making. This person and then the couple will be spending $4,000 a month in today's dollars. That number, of course, will be inflating along the way. Let's get into the software and see just how it looks between these two contrasting cases. All right, let's start by looking at some of my favorite charts that I have in my software. So we'll start here. It's just me, Chad, Chadster, and this is when I'm single. In another tab, I have it when it's a couple. And we'll go to the charts here right away. These are my favorites. So this is my absolute favorite chart that I have access to. It's called the cash inflow chart, and I go over this with all of my clients as we go through the financial planning process. And the reason I like this chart so much is because it does such a great job of painting the picture of where your income is actually coming from in retirement. Just like most, if not all of you, in this scenario, will have access to both OAS and CPP. That's my foundational income. And you can see the light green and the darker green, that's RRSPs and TFSAs respectively. And here in the single scenario, and again, I'm only spending $4,000 per month. CPP and OAS come in at 65. I haven't adjusted CPP or OAS timing because again, that's not the point of this video. I just left it at 65. But you can see a few things. My RRSP runs out in the year that I am turning 75 in this example. And my TFSAs are fully dried out by the time I turn 80, which means that by the time I turn 80 as a single person in this scenario, I am starting to run into liquidity issues. And it doesn't necessarily mean that I have no cash, because I still have, when I move down to the net worth chart here, I still have this dark blue, which is real estate. One thing I should note here that I forgot to mention earlier, I always set real estate to 0% appreciation because that's not usually what we're actually talking about. I'm well aware that that's not what real estate will do over the next 20, 30 years, but I always set it like that in the ecosystem that I create in my software. But in this case, at 80, I'm having to lean on the equity in my home to make ends meet, whether it's me selling it or getting a line of credit or a reverse mortgage, which I don't necessarily recommend, whichever it is. But you can see I'm going into debt starting at 80. So what happens then when I add a spouse? And a reminder, I am adding a spouse with zero RRSPs, zero TFSAs, zero CPP, zero OAS. There is no financial benefit to this person directly, but what benefits can they bring into the picture just by simply existing? Let's take a look at that. All right, so here we are again. This is now the couple. So Chad and Chadette, Chadster. Yeah, I even have it labeled here. It's a couple. All the assets are still under one name. There is no other change that I've made. The spending stays the same, everything like that. Let's take a look at those same charts. So if I go now, I'm going to skip by that first one to the cash inflow chart. Once again, this is my favorite. We're going to notice a whole bunch of things right away. First off, there are green bars all the way to the end, meaning I don't run out of liquid assets while I'm in the retirement years. Previously, my RRSP was running out at age 75. Here, the light green is the RSP. It's not doing its final withdrawal until I'm 84. It's pushing that RSP full depletion out 9 years. That is 9 years if the TFSA doesn't have to be drawn on. That's 9 extra years of compound interest for the TFSA. And all kinds of different compounding effects there as well. 9 years is a massive difference, meaning that the TFSA is more than robust enough to actually carry me through those last 10, 15 years that the previous plan was not. And if we go to the net worth statement, again, real estate set to 0, again, you'll notice a few things very quickly. There's no debt towards the end, meaning I never run into a scenario where I'm out of assets. And again, this isn't a perfect ecosystem of a financial plan or a financial planning software, but I set my software up very, very conservatively so that in the real world, it's likely that you'll outperform the ecosystem that I created here. But what a difference visually this is making right away. And again, this is simply because the other person exists and we're able to do income splitting and divide that taxation between the two people. Instead of being one person with and I'm just spitballing numbers here, $80,000 income, it's two with a $40,000 income each. That's a massive tax savings year to year. And as again, you can see, it really stretches how far your dollars can go. But I want to go one step further. I want to show a chart that compares the actual numbers side by side. So let's jump into that. All right, so this is a process that I've started doing over the last probably 3 to 6 months with all of my clientele, where I actually show how many years retired there is in the projection, how much you're spending, and the actual impact and change between my recommended scenario and the baseline scenario. So let's just first focus on the baseline. In this projection, there was 26 years of retirement projected. Total of, in today's dollars, $1.248 million spent. That's after taxes, that's out of pocket. In inflated dollars, that equates to 1.95 million. Here are the average incomes if you're interested. Total taxable income over the 26-year span, $1,618,622, and a total tax through that time period of $183,281 for an average of 11.32. And again, remember, I had to dip into my house equity to make ends meet. And so in this case, in this projection, my estate would actually be negative $74,949. Now, if you came to me as a single person, I would help plan around this a little bit. I would factor in the reality that your real estate would be increasing. There are efficiencies that can be found. Again, I'm not factoring planning actually into this. It was just simply to show what we're focused on for this video. If I unhide the next two columns and we have the recommended scenarios, the title here, really that's couple. That's the difference here. No change in spending, no change in inflated version of spending, but here's where the differences start to occur. The total taxable income over that 26-year time span increased by $134,000 to $1.75 million. How did that happen? Well, the RSP lasted 9 more years. That's 9 more years of taxable income from there. And then the TFSA took care of its business after the fact, and the TFSA was still worth something in the couple scenario, whereas it wasn't in the single. The total tax, this is what's absolutely unbelievable, dropped to $84,000, a change of negative, or a reduction, of $98,000 in taxes. The average tax rate dropped to 4.82%, a drop of 6.51. That's 58%. That's a 58% reduction in average tax simply by having someone to split their income with over the long term. And the real one that blew me away, the estate is now projected to be $527,559, an increase of $600,000 by simply adding a spouse to this scenario. It is unbelievable and very, very hard to even quantify this going into a financial plan, how impactful this kind of thing would be. Now, again, in reality, I could probably help this single person plan around a few things and find some efficiencies and make this work. This is not like an unsavable scenario or anything like that. And in this case, I would probably be encouraging more spending. So there's a lot of things that are missing here. So it was just isolating on that one point. So I don't know if this video should have been sponsored by Tinder or Bumble or something like that, and that's not really the point that I'm trying to make. I was just trying to illustrate just how set up our system is for couples, and quite frankly, I find it unfair. I do think the government should reevaluate the tax system and see if there is a way to create some tax breaks for single people. I'm not saying no tax or anything like that, but you can see from that example, and it was a very simple, relatively relatable example, that the impact is massive. And if you look at it from one perspective, it's a really, really positive impact and it's welcome. And from the other side, it's completely punishing. So I do feel like there needs to be some sort of balance created. I wanted to show and illustrate just how impactful it was. And I hope that I did that. If it's time for you to review your financial plan with me, there'll be a link in the description below that'll come directly to me. Until next time, keep planning.